every pony, I am the voice of reason, and welcome to the best and worst of Season 3. Well, Season 3 I can safely say was a mixed bag of episodes. We had good ones, enjoyable ones, okay ones, and episodes we'd rather not watch ever again. Now, in this list, I will go over briefly why an episode landed in their respective spots. Also, I want this episode to end on a high note, so let's start off with the worst episodes. But before we do, let's take a quick look at what survived the bottom 5. At number 6, Wonderbolts Academy. I know, I said this episode was good, and I liked an episode by Meriwether Williams. But after watching it again, there were two things I overlooked. First, I made the point that the episode's character development was Season 3 - looking back at Season 1 - which was Lightning Dust. I was wrong. This was more along the lines of Season 3 - looking back at Mare-Do-Well - This episode was Meriwether Williams' apology letter for Rainbow Dash's character 180. But, in my second overlooking factor, in order for Rainbow Dash to look good, they had to make the Wonderbolts look bad. Or worse than they already were. I'm not talking about the drill sergeant thing, that was fine. I'm talking about the fact they rewarded reckless behavior to the point where harming civilians was overlooked. That was my major complaint. Other than that, I really liked the episode. Pinkie Pie's humor was thoroughly enjoyable, the animation was fantastic, and I just love it when Rainbow Dash tells off Spitfire. It's just so great and powerful that it just misses the bottom 5. Alright, here we go, the top 5 worst episodes of Season 3. Number 5, Just for Sidekicks. This episode was probably the most average amongst the others. My two big complaints in this episode were, 1, we were treading over the same ground with Spike's greed getting the better of him, and 2, we received the tie-in story first before we watched the main story. Honestly, this episode structure would feel more natural if the episode was switched with games ponies play. But other than that, Kingdom Hearts Crusaders were written well, pets were a load of fun, and Spike learned his lesson. I'll get to that a little bit later, but in simple terms, I'd rather have a greedy / selfish Spike than a stupid one. In the end, Just for Sidekicks is just okay. Number 4, Games Ponies Play. This episode was just frustrating. The story is cliche and predictable, and the moral, if there is one, seems unnecessary in the end. But there's good character development for Rainbow Dash and Twilight. The art style is visually appealing, and it's damn funny. I should not like this episode, but I do. God, just so damn frustrating. Now you know why I consider it a guilty pleasure. Number 3, One Bad Apple. This episode had one goal. Have an episode that gives a mature message about bullying and how one handles bullying. It failed. With cliched storytelling, contrived plot elements, and the story feeling convenient when necessary, it made the episode an utter mess. Babseed, yeah, good song, but the moral is ruined by Sweetie Belle and her irony statement. Then again, I shouldn't be surprised. When Cindy Morrow writes the Kingdom Hearts Crusaders as a group, they act moronically. I should have seen this coming from the writer of Alice Well That Ends Well. Number 2, Apple Family Reunion. Really? Cindy Morrow again? Come on! She wrote Hurricane, Fluttershy, and Winter Wrap-Up! I know she can write better than whatever the hell this episode is. I admit, the first act of this episode was really interesting. It didn't end a dramatic note like a majority of the episodes in the series. I was hyped to see the entirety of the Apple family. Instead, I saw Applejack, and only Applejack. There is a reason people call her a background pony. She's just not that interesting as a character outside the family aspect. And even then, they screwed it up. But it wasn't as bad as what they did in the next, and what I consider, the worst episode of Season 3. And at number 1, Spike at Your Service. And now let's go down the bad episode checklist for My Little Pony. Semi-interesting plot that falls flat on its face. Check. Complete character 180. Check. Disregard of continuity. Hell, Meriwether Williams' own continuity. Check. Moral being explained to the character that didn't get it. Ladies and gentlemen, we hit all 4 bags. Oh, and here's something I forgot to mention. This is another Meriwether Williams Spike episode that ends on another anti-climax. Congratulations, Meriwether Williams and Dave Polsky. You have written the worst episode of Season 3. And as an added bonus, Spike at Your Service is now the number 3 spot for the worst episode of all time, under Bridal Gossip and Mare-Do-Well respectively. So that was the worst. Now it's time to end with the best, starting with what just missed the top 5. At number 6, The Crystal Empire. Yes, I'm aware there are problems with the story, the songs are weak at best, and it was a more obvious ploy to sell toys than a candlelight wedding. But all that aside, it did set up the season finale, Twilight's character development was well done, and the moral is a brilliant twist. Honestly, I had fewer problems with this story than I did with Wonderbolt's Academy. So, yeah, it's good enough to avoid the bottom 6. Now we get to the top 5, and oh boy, I'm going to piss off so many people with my number 5 and 4 picks. Number 5, Too Many Pinkie Pies. Ah, yes, I can hear the keyboards typing from here. I'm aware there are quite a few people who hate Too Many Pinkie Pies. The main reason behind the hatred, from what I've seen, is that Too Many Pinkie Pies does not portray Pinkie as a three-dimensional character. Episodes such as Party of One and A Friend Indeed, both episodes which I love, portray Pinkie Pie as having depth beyond her zany, happy-go-lucky attitude in life. And I agree, there is depth to Pinkie Pie. But you have to remember, at least in Party of One's case, what caused the depth in the first place. She scheduled an after-birthday party for her pet alligator on the same day as her own birthday and completely forgot. And lest we forget when greeting Cranky-Doodle Donkey, she switched the cake batter with the confetti for a second time. I hear you say, but she still respects the other pony's feelings and moods, as in Griffin the Brush-Off, and here she just caused destruction and chaos, making every pony feel worse. Was I the only one that saw the courtesy splash? She still respects her friends' wishes when they don't feel like hanging out. Also, I can't stress this enough, that was not Pinkie Pie running through the town causing havoc! As I said in my review, the science of cloning was well reflected by showing that the clones of Pinkie Pie had weaker mindsets than the original. Dave Polsky gets that Pinkie Pie is not a one-note joke about fun. She is still the smart, deep, and fun-loving Pinkie Pie we know in this episode. Not to mention, great animation, awesome visual and writing gags, and a simple moral that has a different take on trying to satisfy everyone at the same time. This episode was good. Number 4, Sleepless in Ponyville. If there's one problem I have with Cory Powell's writing style, it's her story structure is terrible. She poorly introduces Luna to the story, having the plot hit a speed bump at the end of the first act, and then has the story hit a brick wall at the beginning of the third. Not to mention, some of the dialogue in this episode seemed not pretentious, what's the word, superfluous, that's it. Half the time, Skulu is stating the painfully obvious about her situation, and it's really unnecessary. But in all honesty, I actually could expect worse. Cory Powell is like the bizarro Meriwether Williams. Both are coming from different backgrounds to write for My Little Pony. Cory Powell has written for shows such as Nihal Kailan, Chuck and His Amazing Friends, and Dinosaur Train, aimed mostly for preschool children. Meriwether Williams wrote for SpongeBob SquarePants, at least the good seasons, Adventure Time, and two-time Primetime Emmy Award-winning cartoon Camp Lazlo. Both Emmys she wrote for. When I see that an Emmy Award-winning writer is going to write for My Little Pony, I expect to see Emmy Award-winning material. Not Dragon Quest, Spikey in Your Service, or Mysterious Mare-de-Well. Wait, we were talking about Sleepless in Ponyville and Cory Powell's writing, right? So other than the terrible story structure and superfluous dialogue, this episode was really damn good. The alienation between Rainbow Dash and Skulu, it worked. The comedy with the side characters was great. While the CMCs were not at their best, they were written pretty good as a group. The animation is stunning, and I experienced a lot of feels in this episode. Despite the unnecessary dialogue during some scenes, I felt for Skulu, and I'm actually anticipating more from Miss Powell, with the yellow flag at the ready in case her preschool days catch up. Number 3, Keep Calm and Flutter On. The Return and Redemption of Discord, written by none other than Dave Polsky, and the story by Ted Antonio. Weird, 2 Dave Polsky episodes in my top 5. Anyway, I see that the Discord Redemption fallout was not as big as I thought it would be. But I do have to agree with the ANY Pony and Biter. The ending was rushed and should have planned Discord's character development better. By the way, check out both ANY's reviews as well as Biter's written reviews on DeviantArt. Both have excellent and introspective points on how they view the episodes. I'll be sure to put links in the description. Anyway, despite the rushed nature of the episode, the character development does make sense with the whole love and tolerance viewpoint. As I already mentioned, they put the core concept of the show to use with the pony who was best suited for the job. Because of that, Keep Calm and Flutter On is most deserving of the number 3 spot. Number 2, Magical Mystery Cure. There is honestly nothing left to say than what I already said in the crossover review. So if you'd like a full detail of why this episode is deserving the number 2 spot, just click the links here and here. But if you like the short version, the story was rushed, character development was well done to complement Twilight's journey, the animation, art style, and music were beautiful, the Destiny moral was bullshit, but the Lou Gehrig speech moral reflects Twilight's character arc exceptionally well. So I give this episode must-watch status along with Crystal Empire, and the best episode of Season 3. And number 1, Magic Duel. I cannot stress enough how amazing this episode turned out. Something I did not stress in my lightning round review of the episode was its natural progression of the story. Every scene in this episode served a purpose. From the curio shop at the beginning, to the first duel, and to the magic demonstration for Saddle Arabia, every scene flowed naturally and was necessary to the plot. I'm officially calling Magic Duel the Amadeus of My Little Pony episodes. If anything were to be added or subtracted from this episode, it would change the story dynamic and actually hurt the episode. M.A. Larson got it right on the first try, and Magic Duel is now my favorite episode of all time, dethroning Lesson 0.
I'm still performing. I didn't say that. Be patient, you'll see.
And that was the best and worst of Season 3. Told you we'd end on a high note. But before we do my Season 4 plus wish list, there is something that has been irritating me that I need to get off my back. Until then, I'm the voice of reason telling you to brace yourselves. It's gonna get ugly.